Brain structure. Now I will be going over the lobes of the brain, change over time, the limbic system, the right and the left hemisphere, as well as more key features. The reason I will be doing this is I have seen questions on paper 3 about the left and the right hemisphere, which is GCSE knowledge, however, it came up. Even though this may be in more detail than needed, it may come up on your paper 3 paper. Some key words you may need to know. Tree panning is to drill holes into the skull. Phrenology, mapping bumps on a person's skull and using this to deduce aspects of their character. Lateralization, the brain has two hemispheres which differentiate. There's evidence in fossil that tree panning was used in connection to migraines and epilepsy, suggesting that over 10,000 years ago, humans had some idea about brain functioning. Hippocrates, a Greek physician born in 460 BC, put forward the idea that each side of the hemisphere had different function. This is the idea of lateralization. 19th century phenatology was used by Franz Joseph Gall. The case of finished skates provided more insight in 1849. Broca found the area of the lower left lobe, Broca's area, responsible for motor control, speech production, and if the Broca's area was damaged, the individual could not understand, but they could speak. This is called Broca aphresia. So you definitely need to know about the different lobes of the brain, and you also need to know what is in the different lobes of the brain. For example, the prefrontal cortex is in the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe, it's located in the front of the brain. The main functions are associated with higher cognitive function, including problem solving, decision making, attention, intelligence. The frontal lobe contains the motor cortex, which is responsible for planning and coordination. It also contains the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for attaining a higher cognitive function, and the Broca's area, which is responsible for language production. Prefrontal cortex helps with attention, emotion, self-control, and decision-making. The prefrontal cortex takes time to fully mature and doesn't finish fully developing until your mid-20s. Damage to it causes conditions like ADHD or depression. You can strengthen it with mindfulness, learning, and staying active. The temporal lobe is located on both sides of the brain, and its function is to understand language, memory, auditory information processing. The parental lobe. This is located at the top of the brain between the frontal and occipital lobe, above the temporal lobe. The parental lobe is essential for integrating information from the body's senses to allow us to build coherent a picture of the world around us. Stroma 2 sensory cortex. This is receiving and processing sensory information. The parental lobe allows us to perceive our bodies through stroma information, 2 sensory information. It helps us with visual spatial processing, reading, and number of representations. The occipital lobe is located at the back of the brain behind the temporal lobe and the parental lobe, and below the occipital bone. It receives sensory information from the visual data. Some functions include being able to access size, depth, distance, determine colour of information, object, and facial recognition, as well as mapping the visual world. It contains the primary cortex, which receives sensory information. The limbic system is a complex network of interconnected brain structures that plays a vital role in regulating human behaviour, emotion, especially those tied to survival instincts. It contributes significantly to memory processing and motivation. Parts of the limbic system are the thalamus, the pineal gland, the hippocampus, the cerebellum, the amygdala, the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus, the cerebellum, and the basal ganglia. Thalamus. It relays information between the cerebral cortex and the brainstem. It has an interactive role in relaying sensory information and motor information. It contributes to many purposes, for example, attention, preparation, and timing. The pineal gland regulates the sleep-wake cycle and circadian rhythms by producing melatonin in response to light and dark signals. Melatonin also impacts moods. The hippocampus is associated with learning and memory. It plays a key role in forming memories, serves as an early storage system for long-term memories, and helps to convert memories into permanent memories. The cerebellum plays a key role in physical coordination as well as regulating emotions and thoughts. It's located in the back of the brain behind the brainstem and aids in motor skills. The amygdala is involved in processing emotions and fear. It ties emotions to meaning, processing of rewards, and helps us to make decisions. It's linked to fight or flight. It's associated with emotions and aggression. The left side of the amygdala links to the reward pathway and positive and negative emotions. The right side of the amygdala links to negative emotions and sadness. The pituitary gland is also known as the master gland. It releases hormones into the bloodstreams and forms a crucial link between emotion processing, survival behaviors, and hormone regulation. Hypothalamus modulates range and physiological functions, controlling autonomic functions, for example hunger. It integrates information from parts of the brain and responds to various stimuli. The hypothalamus is connected to the pituitary gland and is responsible for stimulating or controlling the release of hormones from the pituitary gland. Cerebellum monitors and regulates behaviors. It helps posture and balance. The basal ganglia is a group of structures that regulate the coordination of fine motor movements, balance, and posture alongside the cerebellum. The basal ganglia is connected to motor areas and links the thalamus with the motor cortex. It is involved in cognitive emotions and behavior. The cerebellum is the largest part of the brain. It consists of grey matter and white matter. It contains the lobes of the brain, the frontal lobe, the parental lobe, and the occipital lobe. It produces a high-functioning role, and it is also divided into the right and left hemispheres. The left hemisphere controls the right-hand side of the body and receives information from the right visual field, controlling speech, language, recognition of words, letters, and numbers. The right hemisphere controls the left-hand side of the body and receives information from the left visual field. It controls creativity, context, recognition of objects, places, and faces. The left and the right hemisphere is connected by the corpus callosum, which allows the two hemispheres to communicate and allows information being processed on one side of the brain be shared with the other side of the brain. Finally, ventricles produce cerebral biospinal fluid, which helps cushion the brain from any blows to the head and provide nutrients. High pressure leads to blockage in ventricles, which can cause hydrocedothalamus. The hypothalamus regulates eating, drinking, and motivated behaviors. The hippocampus, the short-term memory passes to the long-term memory through the hippocampus. The cerebellum coordinates movement and balance as well as stores memory and learning skills. It's vital in balance and coordination. The medial temporal lobe, you can shorten this down to MTL. This plays a large role in memory, emotion processing, and it's where the hippocampus is located. The striatum plays a role in motivation. Lastly, the thalamus acts as a brain relay station, processing and directing sensory and motor signals to the correct areas of the cerebral cortex. People with schizophrenia were found to have a significantly reduced volume compared to those without schizophrenia.